scum! Slay candidates! Cleanse, purge, kill!
Hey guys, it's Merrick. I've got another gameplay commentary here today. This is another one with the TMG-50, a weapon that can be absolutely disgusting and completely surgical, but thankfully, today, with this recording, I just so happened to be an absolute ape. The TMG-50 is a weapon that favors a medium to long range, but if you guys have ever watched one of my videos, you know that we're going to be shooting at pretty much everything at every range. So it's going to see that, but it's also going to be used in CQC. Adrenaline shield and assimilate are common heavy staples. I run munitions suit because I always forget to reload my decimator, and it's really good if you just want to use it for value. And survivalist is good if you're going to be taking fights in a large ball. Generally speaking, otherwise, I would run sensor shield and try to flank around the sides. The speed boost and potential health return from survivalist mean once you take a hit, you can sometimes rotate out where you otherwise might not make it, which is why it's better for fights when you're going to be fighting a lot and expecting enemy shooting at you versus sensor shield where you're trying to not get shot. I'm also playing this on my least favorite map, which is Osher, but we got to start off at one of my favorite places on Osher, which is the Tridents. I was feeling like my aim was off today, so I was getting a little greedy and a little frustrated, and I tilted a few different points, but the general game plan when fighting in a Trident, or in general when fighting in a large fight, is to find a place where you have a rotate off path, meaning you can rotate back to get safety or cover, and just try to take fights that are in your favor. You want to take the 1s and 2s fights, as I put it, where you're only going to be running into 1 or 2 people at a time, which is really hard to do in some situations because, especially in large fights, there's generally more than 1 or 2 people, and that's what makes peeking very difficult to do. You need to do it right, you need to do it very shallow, and you need to cut the angles from a long angle. Basically, the farther you are from a corner, the more likely you are to see the enemy before they see you. Whoever is farthest away from the corner will see the other person first. So I try to position to use this pillar as cover from some of the enemies, and I'm trying to take as tight of an angle fight as I can. Seeing a max, I use my decimator, and then I swing back out and pre-fire that corner, hoping the max is there. I was a little late, and if their max was getting repaired, I wouldn't have got him. But if he was on his own, I very well could have gotten the kill, but we wind up picking up a heavy that was unfortunate enough to take up another angle, or take up that angle in his stead. I'm pushed off of my angle by a bunch of nades, and I have to react to somebody peeking over the door at me, and I notice that we're actually getting flanked from their side, and I try to rotate around to pick that up. If this collapses and they break in from the side, this fight could have ended immediately, and I'm trying to hang out and have a good fight. But I died on my left from a guy that I should have known is there because I quite literally watched the max shoot at him and then turn away, but I was not paying attention. Frustrated, I head back to the main fight and try to work any angles that I can to get some kills. I wind up trying to get some cheeky kills on some air-to-grounders that are trying to, slot some shots in there, and I wind up just wasting a bunch of time, so I get frustrated eventually and try to take a more aggressive position.
Die, scum! Get to the enemy!
Even getting a few decent kills in this corner does not sate my frustration, and after I get C4'd, I just walk in a circle, and then like some kind of bot, walk directly back to where I got C4'd previously, and surprise Pikachu face, I get C4'd again. At this point in the fight, it's a little more than a 60-40 in Blue's favor, and it's really hard to find an angle that doesn't get immediately flanked because we no longer have any control over any areas in the map. However, as you've heard me say before, and you will hear me say again in the future, this is the only fight that exists at the moment, and sometimes you gotta make do with what you got. Considering we've lost the gate that I was fighting at before, I went out the other side, and I see some blue trying to get onto the point. I take some long-range shots that I feel like I normally would make, but I don't know if it's the tilt or the fact that I felt like I wasn't playing good today already, but I whiff, and as I go to push up to push onto the point, I see blue expanding outwards from the gate that they crashed through, and I feel like holding this position I have a better chance of getting kills than running across into the open where I cannot rotate back. But I immediately take up tight angles and try to tax them as they're coming in and get any damage that I can. And immediately I disregard my own advice and try to fight from one side of that pillar. If I wanted to fight from there, the position I should have taken is back in the room using that right door frame as cover to make the ankle tight. This current fight is hectic and there's not always something to go over, but as I leave spawn this time, little example of some game sense, I see this guy peeking as he's jumping and I know he's going to re-peek into me. Unfortunately, he has a teammate that swings with him that I did not expect, and I get traded. So, heading out the same way, they're not there, and I'm able to get onto A point and get a lot of damage done with a good position. So I make myself known by getting a kill all the way down the hallway, and then I look to the left and I see two more. I pick up one of them, and I force one back, but I know that the people out there are pushing me, so I swing back to the right for a free kill, and somebody walks right into my kill zone, essentially. I'm not running sensor shield or suppressor, but even if I were, they would have seen my bullets. So as I swung out to see if that guy was getting rezzed, I actually expected him to be running down the hallway at me. I wind up catching him at the end of the hallway, and another person that saw my bullets and tried to push to catch me off. But I knew he was going to be there, even though I didn't know he specifically was going to be right there, if that makes sense. I knew someone was going to push me, I knew someone would be around there, I knew swinging to the right would catch them. I didn't know exactly where, I didn't know exactly who. And after using my brain, it obviously needs a moment to recharge, and I completely ignored the giant glowy blue thing on this Max's chest telling me he's being repaired, and I assume between my decimator and 250 million headshots, that he's low enough to actually kill. He is not. Though you would be surprised how many times just shooting at a Max will kill them. They do die. The more people that shoot at them, the better. But if you can just hit headshots, Maxes will die faster than you and they are comfortable with. After making a terrible play without my brain, it decides to return to me for a moment, and as I push out here, I find a little bit of room to work with and I get a handful of kills. However, I don't notice the nades fly right past me, and I die for free. Now, the opposite end of the gate fight that I was at earlier seems to have been doing pretty well so far, and except for that now, these Maxes are multiplying. And I'm frustrated, so I'm going to make it everybody's problem. I pick up a few spawn room window lickers pretty easily, and then as I get bored and rotate out, I immediately forget how to aim and cope so hard with my bad aim that I even check to make sure my game is in full screen. I'm just bad. Now generally, I avoid using bolt actions on infantry because I consider it a war crime. The archer is a slight exception because I only pull it when there are a bunch of maxes. And there were a bunch of maxes, so I pulled the archer. But I haven't fucking seen them since! So I pay the price for my sins of getting war crime weapons without having anything to use them on, and the servers just tell me no. No fucking way! After we get fully pushed off that point and it times out, I spend some time jumping between points looking for anything that looks like a good fight, and whiffing easy shots on free kills.
Sorceries!
One of those places is Sentry Mining, and as I actually get here, I run all the way through the entire point, out onto the front of the beach, and double back into the base before I even see my first blue person. I can't pick him up at range, and I kick myself a few times for it, but I try to predict where he's going to move, and I assume he's heading towards the point. So I take up a position hoping to cut him off, and while I don't cut him off, I see him moving around, so I rotate into the point. We make contact on entrance, but it's not the guy we're looking for, and while I expect him to come through this door that I'm looking at now, he actually winds up coming in the door behind us. After that's dealt with, I figure I'll head to cap the other points and hopefully have more people show up, but nobody really shows up, so I wind up clearing up the few people I find and then just redeploying. After that didn't go so well, I desperately even jump to this 91-9 and try to make something happen here.
Spotted an enemy heavy.
I wait a little bit, hoping some red population's going to show up, and somebody winds up spotting me in my spawn. If there's anything I hate, it's spawn lickers.
Bring fire upon us and we shall return it!
As some red population shows up and brings the Sunderer with them, I push back out with them, but I just can't seem to keep my enemies in front of me.
Die, scum!
Because of that, rather than approaching from the angle that we had from our spawn room, I take the Sunderer and I try to come around from the front.
Let's fly!
Tango down.
Show me what you're made of.
Enemy light assault in the air.
I wind up getting a little bit more damage in, but nothing substantial, and I actually die to a rocket because I peek without full health, and I jump to another fight. I've been avoiding High Ridge because the spawn point was 700 years away from the point that we're going to be capping, and generally that just means the fight is awful. I show up, and it is exactly as I expected.
Die, scum!
If there's anything I like almost as much as Tridents on Osher, it is interlinks. So as soon as I see one of those light up with a router, I immediately jump to that fight and see what I can make happen. As I get here, I see Blue pushing up the ramp, threatening to kill the router already, and this fight is barely started, so I take up a tight angle and see if I can hold out as long as I can.
To the enemy! Strike true!
Even though I'm finding kills here now, the amount of max noises happening means that this angle is very well covered and I can rotate elsewhere to see what else I can find. On my patrol around the roof, I see an air-to-grounder that I can potentially punish and I try to make it happen. But as I go for that, I see that Blue is coming over the roof of the building that they have and is actually pushing from the outside. So immediately off spawn, I try to re-secure the roof.
Slay the heretics! Let fly! Death to the enemy!
Once it doesn't look like anybody's pushing across there, I rotate around the roof again and try to peek in from one of the peeking angles, and I throw away a free kill. As I get back up though, it's immediately apparent that our situation is significantly worse than it was just a bit ago, as we don't have a max or anything here holding the front, and I try to hold the stairs because it just seems like that's the only thing that I can do right now. And winds up being an okay hold until eventually we get pressured from the outside yet again, and I have to try to fight the roof. I try to push up and take an aggressive angle, but I get a little too greedy, press shift at the wrong time, and I don't have my gun up, so I just take a free death. I don't normally take reses, but I take this one, and I am introduced to absolute chaos. Being pressured on both doorways and the staircase, and it's a miracle this collapse wasn't instant, I figure if the staircase falls, we're gonna get the most blue people up here at once, so I try to spend some time holding that to the neglect of both doors, and we wind up collapsing regardless. But considering this was some of the best fighting I've had the entire time on Osher, considering most of it was spent looking for fights, I refuse to accept that the fight is dead, and I run back in afterwards and try to make something happen. But I get cheesed by myself as I accidentally tab out and just throw my life away. No, I tapped out! No! Full tilt, I click on the nearest spawn point, and when I get there, there's already people shooting at the Sunderer. I manage to clean them up, and then I take an extended, long-range fight with the guys on the roof that makes nothing happen until somebody tries to push up and I'm able to get another few pickoffs.
Eyes open. Enemy heavy.
From here, probably because I'm tilted, I do what I always manage to somehow do, and I jump to a Sunderer at the exact worst time. Thankfully, the Sunderer was unlocked and I could get into it. If I couldn't, there was a Sunderer to my left I could have went for, but it was more luck than skill that I happened to have this happen. The skillful part was that I always managed to wind up in these situations where I find Sunderers that are in terrible spots or dying. Pushing up there, I get flanked from some dude in the corner, and I take a few more bad deaths as I try to push in there and just get some footing, but once we actually wind up getting in there, I can get a little bit done. After taking the res, I hug the right wall and I try to push up to the doorway, and I just take as tight of an angle as I can at a time to get fights. If I wind up seeing somebody, I will back off after I shoot and see if they'll push back into me, and it's kind of just it's a footsies game. But as the video winds down, I hope there were enough examples of how to and how not take tight angled engagements and work around in larger fights where you might not always have the ability to flank. I wind up ending this one on 75 kills in 35 minutes, and I still absolutely abhor Osher. Let me know what you guys think, what you do and don't like, so I can improve these going forward, and I'll see you guys next time.